Hello, my Bill 1000 Nation. How is everyone doing today? Hopefully you're all having a great day. I'm having a good day. It's getting wintertime. It's getting closer to October. Scary movie month. I'm excited. So we are back with another one. I think we're starting off with top fives. This one is 5 mysteries, true crimes, paranormal stories from our viewers' hometowns. TCTH number 12. That's a lot. Alright. So let's jump in. Go ahead, turn them lights down low. Put on something comfy. Cuddle up with someone special. Let's get spooky. Oh no.
Welcome to Too Close to Home, the series where we dig up creepy stories, haunted places and mysteries from our very own patrons' hometowns. This episode we're looking at Jessica, Anthony, Stone, Peter and Crystal. And do we have some good stories in store for you 5? If you want us to dig up stories from your area, head on over to Patreon and join our Too Close to Home tier. Not only will you get access to all of our documentaries there, including our most recent Minds of Madness on Chris Benoit, you'll also be in for a chance of being featured in Too Close to Home. Thank you everyone for supporting us. And now, let's hit those lights, sit back, and get started. Pike County, Kentucky was named after General Zebulon Pike, the explorer who discovered Pike's Peak. The area is renowned for the feud that raged between the Hatfield and McCoy families, that eventually ended in several murders, and today tourists visit the area to examine the graves and the relics of the feud. However, we are going to look at a less well-known case of murder for our patron Jessica, along with some haunting stories from the area. Let's start with the Lily-Lit murders. On April 6, 1997, Jason Bryant, Natasha Cornett, Dean Mullins, Joseph Reisner, Crystal Sturgill, and Karen Howell from Pikeville, Kentucky, left their hometown to travel to New Orleans. Their ages ranged between 14 and 20. After just a few miles, they realized the car they were traveling in wasn't going to make it, so they hatched a plan to steal the car from a parking lot. The friends, who were armed with 2 guns, stopped at a picnic spot along Interstate 81 outside Baileyton in rural Greene County, Tennessee, where they got into a conversation with the Lily-Lit family, who were returning from a religious convention. Violet Lily-Lit, who was carrying his 2-year-old son Peter, had approached Natasha and Karen to discuss his religious views. Soon after, Reisner and Brian joined the conversation, and things escalated when Reisner pulled out his van and said, "I hate to do you this way, but we are going to have to take you with us in your van." Violet pleaded with the group to let them stay at the rest stop, but they refused and forced him, his wife Delphina, son Peter, and daughter Tabitha into their van, and at gunpoint ordered Violet to drive. Dean Mullins and Crystal Sturgill followed in the other car. Reisner directed the Lily-Lits first to the interstate and then to a secluded road at the next exit near Greenville. The Lily-Lits were then lined up against a ditch along the road, where they were shot multiple times. Only little Peter survived the shooting. 2 days after the terrible murders, the gang were arrested. All 6 of the perpetrators were from Pike County, Kentucky, and were known to have had troubled backgrounds, and with the exception of Brian, had attended Betsy Lane High School. During the trial, there were rumors that all 6 were involved with occultism and Satanism. It was very likely that Jason Bryant was the shooter, but all 6 were convicted of murder, although after a plea bargain, they were spared the death penalty and were sentenced to life in prison, with no possibility of parole. To this day, all 6 remain in prison. As for Peter, well, he went on to live with his aunt in Sweden, where he still lives today, and continues to struggle with the injuries he sustained in the attack. Next, we will look at a couple more light-hearted ghostly tales from Pike County, and Jessica with
What? Oh my god. I think I remember seeing something about this, but bro, there's so much that goes on in the news anymore. It's hard to keep track of what. That's horrible. So the only one that lived out of all of it was the baby over there. That's crazy. Just think, if they would have like took him somewhere other than like a ditch on the side of the road, nobody probably would have found him for a while. The baby probably would have actually passed away. They probably wouldn't have been caught. That's crazy. I'm not going to Pikeville. Nope. Won't catch me at Pikeville, Kentucky. No, sir. Unfortunately, that's where old Chris Darling's from. If anyone finds me in a ditch, she did it. I'm just saying. I can see her doing that. She gets awfully angry sometimes. Help! No, just in case she watches this, she is the sweetest person in the world. She farts rainbows.
I'd love to know if you have ever encountered any of these. Let's start with the Ramada Inn. The Ramada Inn in Paintsville is an unlikely looking place to have a ghost. It is fairly modern, and there's nothing creepy about its appearance. However, guests have said that staying there have left them feeling pretty creeped out and unrested after being kept awake by an unseen woman who walks up and down the hallways in high heels, waking guests from their sleep and causing them to get up from their beds and investigate, only to find no one there.
I'd scream at that hooker. Be like, hooker, get out of my hallway.
Others have complained about unexplained voices and levitating objects in their rooms.
That's the people who holler at the hooker. The hooker comes in and throws things at them.
And if you're lucky enough to stay in room 216, you are likely to be disturbed by a woman laughing loudly, who can still be heard when the room is unoccupied. Lastly, let's take a look at the Tan Man of Pike County. The Tan Man has been described as an ordinary, nondescript-looking gentleman dressed in a khaki or tan shirt and pants. No one knows who he is, but those who have seen him say that as soon as you approach him, he disappears in front of your eyes, leaving just the smell of sweet roses behind. In fact, anything strange that happens in Pike County is usually attributed to the mysterious Tan Man. It seems he is to blame for a variety of paranormal phenomena, including musical instruments playing by themselves, the feeling of being followed or touched by invisible hands, objects moving by themselves, lights turning on and off, as well as pets being scared by an unseen force. However, in all instances, it seems the overriding sign.
So you trying to tell me that one ghost haunts all of Pikeville? I'm just going to call Bo. I'm just saying. No, evidently people from Pikeville are very gullible too. Baby, if you're watching this, I'm so sorry.
That the Tan Man is around is the overwhelming smell of roses. Harrison Township in Michigan, USA is a beautiful place and a popular area for tour.
I mean, I bet the flood's really freaking easy though. I don't know how I feel about that. Why is there even cars there? Ain't like it's that big of a place where you need to drive anywhere. Just take a boat.
Due to its proximity to the shores of Lake St. Clair, with its natural trails, playgrounds, beaches, and boat docks. And our patron, Anthony Onufrak, is lucky enough to live there. For you, Anthony, we are first going to look at the sad case of Sean Raymond. In 1992, a human skull was found in material dredged out of the Clinton River in Harrison Township. For 12 years, the skull remained in the custody of the Michigan State Police, until in 2004, the skull was given to forensic artist and Michigan State Police Detective Sergeant Sarah Krause for her to reconstruct. After it was completed, a former work colleague of Sean, who is now a police officer, recognized it, and dental records confirmed it was Sean Raymond, who had been missing for several years. 19-year-old Sean disappeared on July 21, 1983. He had finished his shift at a restaurant in Albany and planned to go to a bar in Detroit with friends. But when he failed to come home the next day, his family reported him missing. Sean was a gay man, and although that should have no bearing on the case, back in the 1980s, it was more taboo, and his family felt, because of that, a lot of his friends kept silent about what they knew. And some even hired lawyers to keep their names out of the investigation. This hindered the case, and initially no sign of Sean or his car were ever found. But after 21 years of hoping Sean would be found, the family finally got the news that Sean was dead. And worse, that his skull had been sitting in an evidence room for 12 years. However, they still do not know the circumstances of his death, and they are understandably angry about the 12-year delay in telling them the devastating news. Both Sean's family and the police believe the people of the community of Harrison Township know the answers to this case, and it's still an open investigation.
Just don't want to say nothing because he likes big butt boys. Who cares? Who cares? No one cares if you like a big butt boy or a big butt girl. As long as it's got a big booty, who cares? Right?
With any information about what happened to Sean Raymond is asked to call the Michigan State Police. Now, we will have to travel just a little way to nearby Detroit to find any ghost.
I don't know jack about
but it's absolutely
I was born in
terrible.
the 80s.
Here we will look at a couple of the lesser known ones, such as the Alhambra Apartments, located on Temple Street in Detroit. This historic block of apartments was built in the early 1900s and has a murderous past. Rose Barron, a cook at the Alhambra, had been demoted to scrubwoman, and in retaliation, she started poisoning the residents by adding arsenic to biscuits she handed out. After residents started being violently sick, Rose was arrested.
Okay. You can poison a lot of things. I don't care. I mean, I do care. You shouldn't poison nothing to kill somebody. But I'm just saying. I know this is starting really messed up, but I'm getting to a valid point. Don't poison biscuits, bruh. Like, it's hard to find a good homemade biscuit. Everybody's like, oh, I got the best scratch biscuits in the world. Oh, I got the best drop biscuits in the world. Oh, I got the... Sometimes they just... So if you make a good biscuit, don't put poison in it, bro. Same way with cornbread. Don't do that with cornbread either. Pancakes. Do with pancakes or waffles. Just don't poison food. Poison drinks. It's not fair. Because here's the reason why. You have people that's like, I just can't eat no more. Hey, bro, you want the rest of this? And then you got fatties like me that's like, and now we both gonna die. That's not fair. See, I told you, it got a little diluted, but there was a point, and that point is, fat boy eats leftovers, and if like you can't finish your plate, and you're like, here, man, you want the rest of this? I'm going to eat it. I'm going to. So don't poison food, people. It's rude for everyone involved.
He was already under suspicion for killing members of her own family to claim insurance money. After a 19-week trial on May 15, 1905, the jury found Rose not guilty, as the people who were poisoned all recovered, unlike her family members, although it's always been believed Rose killed other residents in the apartment, and today the building is said to be haunted, either by a dead former resident, or Rose herself, who remains bitter over her demotion for the rest of her life. It is said that if you walk past the apartment at night, you can see eerie lights inside and a white apparition in the halls of the now abandoned apartment block. The planned redevelopment of the old site.
Maybe it's just homeless people. Good Lord, there's an empty house like every other block. It's got all kinds of homeless people in them. I hate to say that, but it's true. Well, I was working on this lady's house over in Huntington. And there was an apartment building like, here's her house. It was like the next corner, right on the corner from her block. Like, you could see it. And you just see him, like, jimmy the window up, go in there. They had a maid in there, though. They hooked into the electric wire. They hooked into the cable wire. They hooked into everything, bro. They had it up and running. And you'd see them. They'd go in there. A few would go in on this side. A few would go in on this side. A few of them would just go straight through the door, the ones that could open the door. And the first time I ever seen it, I was like, I thought you said that place was empty. Yeah, there's lights in there, bro. Like, I see shadows moving by the window and stuff. Is it haunted? Yes. The homeless people. Oh. At least they have a nice setup in there. No, police come through about 3 o'clock every morning and chase them out of there. After they go through all that work.
It's recently stalled, and we wonder if Rose has anything to do with that. Moving on to the Detroit Art Center Music School, it's well known that the legendary escape artist Harry Houdini's final performance was at the Carrick Theatre in Detroit. It's reported that during that performance, he was already gravely ill and passed out during the show, having to be revived before continuing, and soon after he was hospitalized at Detroit's Grace Hospital, where on October 31st, 1926, at the age of 52, he died. After his death, his body was taken to W.H. Hamilton & Co. Funeral Home, where his corpse was temporarily laid out in a coffin that had been commissioned as a prop for one of his stage shows, before he was taken to New York to be buried. In 1989, the building that once housed the W.R. Hamilton Funeral Home was sold to Detroit's Art Center Music School, and it's said that the spirit of Houdini remains in the building, and many believe it's no coincidence that Houdini died on Halloween. One of the most credible sightings of him was witnessed by an elderly receptionist who worked at the school, named Juanita. She claimed that one evening she was alone, finishing some work, when she felt a cold rush of air, and when she looked up, she saw Harry Houdini standing in the doorway to her office. She later claimed that every year on the anniversary of his death, Houdini would appear without fail in the same spot. Juanita, who lived until she was 102, told the story of her encounters with Houdini for the rest of her life. Although many believe Houdini's spirit lingers in Detroit, no other sightings have been seen so clearly since.
Houdini.
Sterling is a small area in Loudoun County, Virginia, and is the hometown of Stone Gassman. Stone has suggested we lived slightly outside of Sterling at Leesburg, so that is where we started our search, and one of the first cases we found was the tragic and unusual murder of an eminent scientist. Robert Schwartz was a renowned scientist in the field of biometrics and DNA research who lived in a farmhouse in Leesburg. He was the father of 3 children, Catherine, Jessie, and Clara Jane, and it was his 20-year-old daughter Clara Jane who was responsible for his bizarre murder. Clara, who was a sophomore at James Madison University at the time of the murder, had grown to increasingly dislike her father.
She looks like she's
to the
2.
point she spoke to friends about killing him. And at first, she tried to research herbal poisons in order to make his death appear natural. She was also concerned he would cut her out of his will, as she was due to inherit a large sum of money. After failing to convince a previous boyfriend to kill Robert, she later met 18-year-old Carl Hilbert at Virginia Renaissance Festival in 2001. Carl was already a troubled young man with a profound mental illness, and he soon fell under the spell of Clara through their shared interest of witchcraft, the occult, and fantasy games. Clara, who called herself the Priestess of High Chaos, convinced Kyle that her father was trying to kill her, and that he frequently physically abused her by punching her and pulling her hair. When Kyle heard this, he did not hesitate in coming to her rescue by agreeing to kill him.
Wow.
On December 8, 2001, Hilbert...
Manipulating little hooker. What? That fool gullible, though. I'm just saying. Wow. Okay. I'm glad I ain't got no money. No one wants to kill me go for money. I ain't got none.
and two friends, 28-year-old Michael and 19-year-old Catherine, drove to Robert's farmhouse. Hulbert entered the house alone and attacked the scientist with a 27-inch sword. Hulbert slashed at the defenseless man, stabbing him 40 to 45 times before leaving him to die.
Oh my God!
Robert's body wasn't discovered for 2 days.
This fool a little too into Dungeons and Dragons. I'm just saying. No. He went there with daggers of fury. Went there with a sword and cut this man 40 to 45. What? And she looks like she's 2. By Mordor.
But almost as soon as he was, the 3 perpetrators were arrested. And that is when the plot unraveled, and Clara was implicated in the crime, although it was a couple of months before she was arrested. At her trial, the prosecutors portrayed Clara as a manipulative young woman who used the role-playing game Underworld to convince her friends to kill her father. On October 16, 2002, the jury convicted Clara of first-degree murder, and she was sentenced to serve 48 years in prison. She is currently housed at the Fluvanna Correctional Center for Women near Troy, Virginia. She has made many unsuccessful attempts to appeal her conviction. For their roles in the murder, Hulbert was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Michael was sentenced to 18 years, and Catherine served a 1-year sentence for conspiracy to commit murder. Apart from the grisly murder, we also found a couple of reputed haunted places near to Stone's hometown. First, we'll look at Ball Bluffs Battlefield Regional Park.
Okay, I understand why the one dude got life. But isn't the rule like everyone involved usually gets the same sentence? No, I understand the one girl was, conspiracy and all that. But if the other 2 was like actually involved in killing this dude, and the girl literally put them up to it, shouldn't they all get life in prison? Why does she only get 48 years? I mean, no, she's going to be like in her 60s by the time she gets out. But at least her 60s. She'd be out enough time to retire and sit on her butt and do nothing.
Pike, said to be one of the most haunted places in the state. The park is where the Civil War battle of Ball's Bluff was fought. The battle, which took place on October 21st, 1861, was a disaster from start to finish for the Union Army. More than 900 Union troops were killed, wounded, or taken prisoner, and 54 of the dead are buried in 25 graves in a small cemetery in Ball's Bluff. Sadly, 53 of them are unknown, with only James Allen of the 15th Massachusetts Infantry being identified. Over the years, lots of strange stories about the restless dead have been told, with reports of blood-curdling unexplained screams being heard, as well as a tree that shakes violently for no apparent reason near the site of a soldier's grave. Additionally, phantom footsteps, inexplicable sounds, and sightings of shadowy figures in uniforms have also been reported. The park is full of history and is said to be particularly eerie, especially at night. We'd love to know if you've ever been there, Stone.
Most national parks, when they're really creepy wooded and they're away from everyone, are creepy. Doesn't just have to be that. I mean, in the fall time, any woods is creepy, especially when it's secluded. There's no lights and it's just dark, and the only thing you got lighting it up is the moon and the stars. I was like, werewolf. There's a werewolf. You go over there and it's like a bush with a little bit of leaves on it and a bag stuck in it, and it's like, people make things to be creepier than what they're supposed to be. They're new.
Had any creepy experiences there? Next up is the Oaklands Plantation, a former 3,500-acre wheat and wool producer that sadly, in the past, relied on slave labor for its success. Nowadays, the historic site has been reduced to 260 acres, with a manor house that is judged to be one of the finest federal period houses in the nation.
It's pretty.
And is now owned by the National Trust, and it's the house that is reported to be teeming with paranormal activity. There are reports of footsteps by unknown persons, as well as voices and the alarms being set off for no reason. It seems it's the staff that bear the brunt of the paranormal incidents. In certain parts of the mansion, the temperature is known to drop dramatically, and doors inexplicably lock themselves. Sometimes staff look at family portraits on the walls, and the images blur before their eyes. In the servants' quarters on the third floor, running water can often be heard, and apparitions have been seen there as well. Ghost hunters who are attracted to the house because of its reputation have recorded clear, unexplained human voices during their investigations, along with the strong smell of roses, a common occurrence throughout the building. It's believed to be so haunted that it now runs paranormal tours for visitors to experience the activity for themselves. Stone, we'd love to know if you've ever been to the house and experienced anything strange.
It's a nice house, though. I'd love to get an old colonial house like that.
City located in southeast Australia and is the country's capital. It's surrounded by mountain ranges and nature reserves and is full of history, so it's no surprise that many of the popular visitor attractions have resident ghosts. Peter de Beraris, whose hometown is Canberra, has sent us a personal story along with a few...
Speaking of haunted houses, did you all know that the Conjuring house is back up for sale for $1.2 million? I don't have it. I would like to own the house, but I don't have $1.2 million. And no, I wouldn't do tours and stuff like that. I would live in it. I think it's a beautiful place.
Suggestions of places to look at, and we are not disappointed. We'll start with a story Peter sent us about a nurse who works on Canberra Hospital's paediatric ward. The ward is fairly new, having only been opened about 5 years ago. But since its opening, many of the nurses who work there have experienced strange things. Some of the nurses who work the night shift use empty wards to take their breaks, or have a sleep, and on more than one occasion, they've heard footsteps of a toddler running up and down the ward hallway. They've also seen the privacy curtains that pull around the beds open by themselves. Shadow people have also been seen, as well as flickering lights in empty rooms, and call bells going on and off by themselves. In fact, the lights flickering got so bad that electricians were called in, but could find no faults. Now, apart from the unfortunate deaths that inevitably occur at any hospital, we couldn't find any history that could explain the activity. The only unavoidable tragedy we could find happened at the hospital that preceded Canberra Hospital, known as the Royal Canberra Hospital, located on Acton Peninsula. It closed when services were transferred to the newer Canberra Hospital, and the building was demolished by implosion on the 13th of July 1997, killing a 12-year-old girl named Katie Bender, who was hit by flying debris. Next up, we have the air disaster.
What? How does she get... Where do you go in more detail on that one? That one... What? Oh, yeah, we don't know why it is. They blew up another building, imploded. Some girl died from the debris. Was she in the building? Was she next to the building? Why did she die? I'm hangry.
Memorial. This is the site of a tragic aircraft accident in 1940. when a plane went down in Fairbairn Pine Plantation, killing all 10 people on board. At the site is a commemorative plaque to remember those who lost their lives. Those who have visited the area say there is something very unsettling about the place, and many have experienced paranormal phenomena. It's said that if you drive near the site, your car is likely to stall and not start up again. There have also been disturbing reports of sightings of a burning airman, a figure that appears in a fire flash before your eyes. Of course, all of this could be stirred up in the minds of the visitors, as by all accounts the location is very eerie. We'd be interested to know if you visited the site, Peter, and felt anything strange. Next up, we have Blundell's Cottage, another place in Canberra said to be haunted.
I mean, a plane crash site is going to be creepy. I mean, is there still some of the wreckage and debris there? I mean, that can hold stuff there. I mean, I don't know if I'd want to see. No.
Which is located next to Lake Burley Griffin. The cottage was built in 1860 and was initially home to the Ginn family, before passing on to George Blundell and his family, who lived there until 1933. The cottage is believed to be haunted by the ghost of Blundell's eldest child, named Flora, who one day got too close to the fireplace and caught on fire. Those who have visited the house swear they can smell burning, and some report hearing a child scream in pain. Next up is Hotel Carajong, a place that has a truly haunting history. The luxury hotel is located in Barton, and it's said that Australia's 16th president, Ben Chifley, lived in a room at the hotel for 11 years, before suffering a heart attack and passing away in the room. Today, the hotel rents Ben Chifley's former room out to visitors, so they can experience how he lived, and many of them get more than they bargained for, as it seems Ben often joins them in spirit form, as he's been seen walking around in his grey suit, looking out of the window, or sitting on the balcony. Lastly, we have the National Film and Sound Archive. The National Film and Sound Archive building in Canberra once served as the Institute of Anatomy and housed human skeletons, animal specimens, and other artifacts. The building is thought to be not only one of the most haunted in Canberra, but also one of the most haunted in Australia. Its reputation stems back to the 1920s, when Walter Burley Griffin designed the building and envisioned it being a National Museum of Zoology. Sir Colin Mackenzie was tasked with bringing this vision to life, and he filled the building and grounds with a strange collection of animal and human skeletons, as well as live animals. However, when the money ran out to keep up the collection, the museum rented part of it out to the Institute of Anatomy and was open to the public. Over the years, the bizarre collection included Far Lap, the racehorse's heart, Ned Kelly's skull, and a mummy from Papua New Guinea. Eventually, the collection was moved to the National Museum of Australia, and the building was left empty for a few years. But in 1985, the National Film and Sound Archive moved into the building, and rooms where skeletons used to be displayed now show film memorabilia. In the foyer, there are 9 busts of famous Australians, including 2 death masks, and stored in a wall are the ashes of none other than Sir Colin Mackenzie, and it's Mackenzie who is believed to haunt the building. A number of sightings of him have been reported, and some say he has been seen coming out of the wall where his ashes are. Reportedly he appears, looks around, and then sucks back into the wall. But he is not the only apparition seen in the building. The ghost of a little girl has also been known to pop out of the grating in the old theaterette area.
They ain't burn this building down. It was full of dead animals. Skeletons of dead animals, dead peoples. Now it's got death mask in it and ashes and no crap, it'd be haunted after all. Death mask ain't no joke, bruh.
And in the old dissection labs that are now offices, all sorts of strange things happen, including odd noises, objects flying around the room, and equipment malfunctions. Ghost hunting organizations who have visited the site have reported similar problems with their equipment, which they say confirms the presence of spirits, as they are known to suck the energy out of batteries. The next place we are looking at is Eagle River in Anchorage, Alaska. Now, most people think of Alaska as all glaciers, mountains, and wildlife, But as Crystal, our patron, has found out, there is plenty of paranormal activity in the area as well. And first, we will share a personal story from Crystal about her creepy experiences. Crystal's story started shortly after she was born. For several years, whenever her parents took pictures of her, orbs and other strange anomalies appeared in the photos, even though they were not visible at the time. This kept happening until Crystal was about 5 years old, when the anomalies seemed to lessen. However, the strangeness did not stop there. It started manifesting in other ways. Fruit rolling out of deep fruit bowls, and taps turning on by themselves. Over the next few years, other strange things happened, such as TV channels changing by themselves, and VHS tapes rewinding by themselves. These things continued until Crystal moved out of the house aged 12 when her parents divorced. However, when Crystal was 15, she returned to the house to stay with her dad for Christmas, and on Boxing Day she went to bed around 11 p.m, only to be awoken by what sounded like someone pounding on the door. Terrified, Crystal woke up her dad, and he told her to go and check it out. So she went downstairs and looked through the peephole on the front door, but there was no one there. Crystal went back to bed, but the knocking continued for over 30 minutes, abruptly stopping when she blew out a candle that was still lit in the bathroom. A few months after the unsettling incident,
What kind of dad's gonna be like, no, I don't care, he's not gonna do it. You go, I ain't know. Your kid runs to your room, like, whoa, Dad, look, there's someone beating on the door. I don't know who it is. You get off your butt and you go look. You don't send your child to do it. What if it's like a killer clown? Some kind of deranged psychopath standing there with a chainsaw.
Crystal and her mum moved out of state, and during that time nothing strange happened. But when she moved back in with her dad when she was 19, the activity started again, with a strange feeling that someone was watching her in the house. Crystal's dad also confessed he was getting the same feeling, and they noticed their cats were acting strangely around a certain spot in the house. A few years later, Crystal was again staying with her father at Christmas. By this time, one of her cats had passed away, and this particular cat had a very distinct meow. Well, one evening, both Crystal and her dad heard the distinct meowing of the dead cat coming from upstairs. But when they went up to check it out, there was no cat there. If that wasn't creepy enough, we have found a couple of locations near Crystal's hometown that are reputed to be haunted, including Birchwood Saloon. Birchwood Saloon is about 7 miles from Eagle River. It's a family-friendly bar and restaurant with a reputation for being haunted by either a poltergeist or the ghost of a man called Jack. Jack is not a malevolent spirit, he's more of a prankster, and is known for knocking around pool balls and messing about with the lights. It's believed that Jack was the son of a previous owner of the bar, who was tragically electrocuted whilst trying to fix an antenna on the roof of the building. Staff and visitors to the bar report seeing an unfamiliar figure dressed in jeans and a flannel shirt flash before them, walking through the bar, and there have also been reports of footsteps coming from the roof. Others have reported that Jack likes to move objects around and mess about with people's drinks. Whatever the truth about Jack, he seems to be a big draw for the bar, and paranormal enthusiasts travel there to try and catch a glimpse of him. Next up, we have the Wendy Williamson Auditorium at the University of Alaska, another place reputed to be haunted by several spirits. Visitors and staff have reported seeing a lady dressed in white, who often appears on stage, even though she is not part of the show. Another ghost said to haunt the area is that of a teenage boy who messes with the lighting booth, as well as a more malevolent male ghost who appears to have a dislike of women with brunette hair. It is said he pushes their backs, and has even been known to push women down the stairs. However, perhaps the most well-known ghost is that of John Wendell Williamson, or Wendy as he is affectionately known, who haunts the auditorium that he was named after, and has been seen still playing the piano in the lobby long after his death in 1988. John was a former music teacher at the university, and it seems he cannot stay away. Lastly, we have the St. Nicholas Orthodox Church in Eklunta for Crystal. Another curious place just out of Anchorage is the graveyard outside of the St. Nicholas Orthodox Church. It's filled with more than 100 colourful spirit houses, built to cover burial sites. The miniature buildings combine Russian Orthodox tradition and Native American practices. About 800 years ago, the area was the site of many Dena'ina Athabascan Indian villages, and when Russian Orthodox missionaries arrived in the area, in around 1830, the two communities slowly integrated. Before the missionaries arrived, it was customary for the tribe to cremate their dead, but when the cultures started to blend, they began burying their deceased in the cemetery, built up around St. Nicholas Church, and the spirit houses were built as part of the Athabascan tradition to provide a place for the deceased soul to dwell during the 40 days it's believed to linger in this world, and the spirit houses were painted in the colours that represent the family. The final touch seen on some of the spirit houses is the Orthodox Christianity symbol of a wooden 3-bar cross, a sign of the culture integration. Although we couldn't find any reports of hauntings at the cemetery, it does look like an eerie place with all those brightly coloured doll houses for the dead.
Yeah.
So that's it for this episode of Too Close to Home. We hope you've enjoyed.
Definitely. Yeah. Alright. Now we're moving on to top 15s. Top 15 scary videos that will leave you shocked.
Number 15. This footage was supposedly taken from a submarine lurking somewhere. Number 15. This footage was supposedly taken from a submarine lurking somewhere in the Greenland Sea. The crew is so fascinated with a school of fish overhead that they fail to see a much rarer creature directly behind them. A large webbed hand that is roughly 5 times larger than any human's slaps the glass before pushing away. It's almost as if the humanoid creature was toying with the submarine crew and wanted to make its presence known. However, one thing bothers me about this video. If everyone is so interested in the school of fish passing above them, then why is the cameraman focusing on his crewmate's reaction instead of the fish? This video could very well be scripted and CGI, although it also wouldn't
That's creepy
surprise
looking.
me if it really was legitimate. Only the submarine crew knows for sure. When the dog jumps up to get a tennis ball, it pushes the blinds away and you can just barely make out half of an ape-like face looking into the window. If you still can't see it, then other YouTubers have slowed the video down and taken a screenshot. As you can see, something is clearly looking
Yeah,
at
right
them.
behind his ear.
If this was just a reflection, then it should look like the back of a student's head, but it is clearly someone's face. It looks like it could be some sort of humanoid. Another possible explanation would be some sort of fake dummy or statue they've placed outside of the window. Other people point out that the dog does not look frightened by the face at all, but then again, the dog might have been too focused on getting the ball to notice anything else. Also, if this video was fake, then the dog would have to be taught to jump up on the back of the couch just at the right time, which would be kind of hard to do. Plus, you don't hear or see any commandments given towards the dog. Overall, this video has a very natural feel. Number 14. Hina Tahir and her sister are camping in New Jersey's Double Trouble State Park when they notice a strange woman who is half submerged in a local lake. Her clothes are all white, and she has a serious expression on her face as she sways in place. To this very day, the two girls aren't sure if what they recorded was a live person or a ghost. If it was a person, then I have absolutely no idea why they would be in the water, well fully clothed, and if it was a ghost, then maybe her body is lurking in the shadow waters below. Whatever the case may be, Hina and her sister decide to leave the woman in peace and dare not go any closer. Number 13.
Maybe she's just
Downright
wanting to get.
Dives is a 3-man team of dumpster divers who go through the trash looking for discarded.
Maybe she just wanted to jump in. Some people are weird like that. Like none of you have ever jumped into a lake wearing all your clothes. It was middle day. She couldn't do it butt naked. Probably get in trouble.
Valuables. They comb through a series of dumpsters without incident, mostly coming across old rotten food. They're searching through the last couple of dumpsters when one of them makes a startling discovery.
No. Guys. I'm not even joking.
Neither of his two friends believe that there could have been somebody lying at the bottom of the dumpster. They just have to take a closer look for themselves.
That box right there just moved. I'm not even joking.
The camera doesn't get a clean shot, but you can hear a man pop up from underneath the boxes and screams that he owns everything inside of the dumpster. According to the description, it was a homeless man who continued to come after them and even got into a physical altercation off camera. I'm on the fence with this one since we never get a chance to see the homeless person in question. Also, living in a dumpster is a stereotype about homeless people that is rarely true, so this encounter is very unlikely. Let me know if you agree. Number 12.
That's possible.
Our son is a YouTuber who claims that his old apartment was haunted to the point where he had to leave. When he finally moved into a different location, it didn't take long for the spirits to follow him there too. Core's son claims to have made this video after feeling a familiar presence watching over him while he was eating a meal. He studies the chair for a bit and decides to challenge the spirit's power. After this, he quickly ran upstairs and uploaded the video to YouTube. Granted, we could not see the entire chair from this angle, so I guess there could have been something wrapped around the chair legs to make it look like there was
someone down and just...
This would require another person to pull off, though. And as far as I can tell, Core's son was completely alone. We'll never know for sure, but I would like to hear your best guess as to the legitimacy of this video.
This is
a YouTuber named Michael D. McGee has been conducting paranormal experiments for years. Apparently, Michael summons a spirit who is willing to move things on his command. To prove this, Michael takes a metal fruit bowl full of apples and shows it to the camera. He says that whenever he concentrates and asks the ghost to move it for him, it does. After showing that there is no one else in the room and no strings on the floor or attached to the bowl, he places the fruit bowl down, making sure to keep himself in the frame the whole time. This supposedly is what he is able to get a ghost to do.
If the
What I'll say.
Again, I just wanted to stress that Michael insists that this is not telepathy, but rather an actual spirit who he is able to communicate with and give.
So he's training ghosts like puppies.
He has able to replicate this experiment with other objects. What separates this video from others is that there are clearly no strings attached. If this is fake, it's unclear as to how he is making these objects move. Number 11. A group of musician friends are jamming out in the woods in Oregon when a tiny creature suddenly attacks one of them in broad daylight.
It's a bat!
The bat hits Derek on his shoulder with a dull thud, and all of the instruments stop. Everyone watches in disbelief as the tiny creature climbs up his body, and Derek can even feel its cold snout as it plants its tiny sharp teeth into his neck, just inches away from the jugular vein.
And then it just bit me.
It latched onto his shoulder, then crawled up his neck.
He throws the bat off and watches it fly into a tree, where it continues silently watching them from afar. They are freaked out at this point, but they think that it was just a freak occurrence and decide to play some more music. After the bat makes 2 more swipes at the man, however, his friend has had enough and shoots it with a BB gun. The group takes the bat corpse back to the local health department and has it tested. Sure enough, Derek had been bitten by a rabid bat. He had to get rabies shots for days afterwards. Athlete Chad is finishing up a camping trip with his family in Rexburg.
Oh my God. Don't let him lie to you. He's a vampire. He's a vampire now. They was giving him garlic injections. Yeah.
Idaho, when he notices a large bear approaching his motorhome without fear. Soon it rears up on its hind legs to get a better look at what's inside the camper.
Hey.
No, he's driving the thing down.
Hey, no. That is breaking apart.
The The YouTuber and his family managed to get away unharmed, but the teeth marks on their side view mirror will always remind them they came face to face with a wild animal in the woods. Number 10.
Well, he was just wanting to
Experts have
play.
yet to debunk a YouTube channel claiming to break the very boundaries of space and time. The channel features no less than 8 videos taking place over the course of a year, which focus on a strange glowing device. The device apparently uses different tones and frequencies to experiment with interdimensional travel. Here you can see the first real signs of success from a video in 2017.
There's
fracture.
Some sort of molecular rift opens between his very eyes and looks very convincing. The rift appears to move very realistically with the camera and does not look to be CGI. After a few months of research and careful adjustments, he finally figures out the correct combination of frequencies to open the rift wider than ever before. Again, nothing about this looks like CGI to me. The way the rift moves with the camera would have been very hard to digitize frame by frame in my opinion, especially when the camera goes out of focus at the 1 minute 50-second mark. Soon the edges of the rift grow thin, and another world emerges. If this video is to be believed, then what you could be staring into is an alternate timeline of our own world. So far, video editing experts have yet to disprove this video, so let me know if you think it's fake or real based on what you've seen here.
Bo.
Number 9.
If I open up a rift to another world, I'm jumping through that. I gotta know. Because evidently he can redo everything he just did and make the rift again and come back, right? I don't know. It's still bull.
News team is reporting on a bank heist in Minnesota that happened yesterday when suddenly a bank employee comes flying out of the building, pointing out someone off camera.
Just 24 hours ago, this bank in... What? Oh, that's a robber.
There's the bad guy right there, the banker says as he sprints towards the subject, who is getting into a van. As it turns out, a man named Ryan Lisko had just robbed the same bank 2 days in a row. The news team just happened to be there reporting the first incident when the exact same thing unfolded for a second time right before their very eyes. Ryan was captured shortly thereafter and sentenced to nearly 10 years in prison. So fortunately, this probably won't happen a third time anytime soon. Number 8. This official YouTube video comes from Channel 4 News in Britain. A news anchor called Tom Watson is reading off a teleprompter when something flies over the live green screen behind him.
Parliament was misled by the company, and what our committee is trying to do.
Slow down the footage and you can clearly see a white saucer descend across the city skyline. Some people have pointed out that this could be a drone, but this footage was taken in 2011. Way before drones were publicly available, so I guess this was either a government-owned drone or an actual alien spacecraft, but we'll likely never know for sure. Number 7.
Or a bird dive
reporter
bombing
is
something.
doing a basic story about heavy traffic patterns in Gwinnett County, Georgia. When she stops and interviews a random person passing by, he politely comments about local transportation for a bit and then quickly goes on his way. The news reporter is later contacted by police for urgent questioning. A witness says that they saw a man rob a bank and then afterwards stop at a news van to conduct a short interview. The interview footage you see here, along with photos of a license plate and other surveillance footage, was enough for police to arrest him. They identified the man as Eric Rivers and quickly took him into custody. Number 6. The State Line Bridge connects Virginia to North...
Oh my god. That's so stupid. I'm gonna rob this bank. You know something? I'm feeling just awesome about it. You don't go over here and get interviewed by this news people, you know. Shoot. That's dumb, bruh. That was dumb. That was dumb.
Carolina, the locals call it Satan's Bridge due to the large amount of ritual activity going on under there. A YouTuber named Scary Weather made a documentary about it almost 20 years ago, and recently came across the footage again. The first half of the video shows nothing but animal bodies littering the ground, which I can't show here. He then comes back the next day and videotapes all of the weird graffiti and other ritualistic scenes, like these 5 rocks, for example. If you happen to know what this symbol means, or what enchantments were being cast here, then please share what you know, and also tell me what the white paint means here, because I honestly can't even begin to guess.
Also, you see here 5 stones, a white mark in them.
This part of the bridge looks like it could be some sort of altar. There's a huge dark red stain on the ground that trails off into tiny blotches. Something tells me that's probably not paint, but let me know what you think. There's one last fact about this location that I have to tell you. Now, I'm not a numerical conspiracy theorist by any means, but the identification number of this state bridge happens to be 6906. If you take out the 0 and flip the middle 6, you get 3 6s in a row. This old
That's a
video
lot of
was
work.
allegedly taken in 1988, then found in a remote log cabin decades later before making its way onto YouTube.
I think it's kind of
An
reaching on
unseen
them.
cameraman is intently studying an open window when suddenly this happens. The window snaps shut just as a paranormal wail fills the entire forest and the camera goes blank. The quality of this video kind of looks digital to me, so this could be fake, but I'm
Oh,
not
it's
so
fake.
sure. Maybe they were using a filter to make it look older. Let me know if you have the answer and also
No,
how
it's
you
fake.
could tell. Number
Because the lines are
5,
too
this
perfect.
BBC broadcast picked up something so strange that they later asked viewers to call in if they saw it themselves. A news anchor is casually reporting on a normal news story when something very unusual zooms by the webcam in the background.
Headlines. And did you spot something suspicious in the screen behind me? Have a look. Is it a bird? Is it a plane? Just what is it?
It's Mighty
I
Mouse.
personally wouldn't be surprised if it was a bug. Somebody else mentioned that it could be light reflecting off of an overhead aircraft on a cloudy day. Let me know if you
That's
think
a lot of
these
work.
2 possible explanations seem reasonable. The Kaiser Report is an English-speaking news show based out of Moscow, Russia. There's a moment during the 457th episode that
What is with all these things wanting to be on the news? I mean, look at that thing. It's like, pew! It's Mighty Mouse again.
captures a UFO zooming by overhead.
Just so you understand the implications of what this could mean for the world and the global agricultural food supply.
Some people claim that this is a bird, while others say that this is way too fast. I'm not sure if this is a bird or something else, but when you slow the footage down, you can clearly see that it has the shape of a saucer. Number 4. Ethan Menard and his friend are out exploring when they find a long tunnel that gives off a creepy vibe. When they are commenting on how dark the tunnel is and just trying to keep calm in general, when suddenly a small child's voice chimes in somewhere behind them. The
I barely
timing
hear
of
that.
this creepy small voice is quite a curious and morbid coincidence. It simply says hello at just the right moment during a pause in their conversation.
It's like pitch black in here.
Whether this was real or edited is up for you to decide, but I think there is a strong chance that something paranormal was down there. This video is from a camping trip that Emery Buckner and his friends took back in 2010. After introducing each of his friends by name, something catches Emery's eye. He zooms in on a small clearing in the woods that's just up ahead, and that's when he sees it for the first time.
Yeah, what is that?
That's what?
Seriously, guys. I seriously saw something over there.
None of his friends manage to see it, but Emery encourages them to stay still and keep looking. Then, sure enough, the red glowing eyes return.
Oh my God! What is that? That's it. That's it. Oh my gosh!
They waste little time retreating to their boat and speed away to safety. But just before they take off, Emery catches the creature a final time. It's now casually observing the group, while perched in a tree, its head cocked to the side, its faint outline barely visible behind a pair of glowing red eyes. Number 3.
There was a lot more to that video. Alright, go ahead and break it down. The red eyes, it runs out at them. They all take off. 3 out of the 4 get into a boat. 1 isn't in a boat. He's actually up on top of that cliff where that thing was. It wasn't a tree, it was a cliff. He jumps off, the thing's like, look, and the guy swims over to the boat, gets in, and then the thing jumps off into the water and starts swimming after him, and then it cuts off. So, there was more. Come on now, Chills.
This 1994 video footage was recovered somewhere in the South American country of Paraguay. The footage itself is just some kids hanging out together late at night, but the audio is completely messed up and sounds like something straight out of the underworld. More than one viewer has said they've heard subliminal messages from this video, which is little more than a series of 5-second clips pasted together. At one point, we see a disjointed figure standing in a strange pose, followed by this deep noise. I guess the sound could be distortion from an aged tape, but in my opinion, it almost sounds like a possession at times. Let me know if you agree that there's something sinister about this video, and if any of these kids could have had a spirit lurking inside of them. Number 2, NASA scientists are in the middle of conducting a 9-hour space experiment when this strangely haunting static fills their ears. NASA experts describe the noise only as complex signals. They think it could be anything from equipment vibrations to gravity waves, but I think it sounds like it could be some radio signal from another galaxy. Many believe that some kind of life form was trying to contact us, and I agree that's a definite possibility, especially considering the sound was only heard for a single minute and never again. Either way, the mysterious sound you've just heard was recorded in 2014 and has been baffling experts ever since. No clear explanation has ever been provided, so I'd like to get...
Is it just me, or has anyone else noticed that Chills is really trying to reach on some of these ones here lately? I'm just saying.
If possible, I've got a challenge for you.
Nope.
Since you've made it this far,
Ain't doing a
like
challenge.
This video and hit
Ain't doing it. Can't make me.
Number 1.
I think it's alive. I don't know what it is. It does look like from the top of it, like it's breathing or something.
This is the reaction of a YouTuber named Thomas Wall after he and a friend encountered this strange round mass in the water. They are somewhere in Godrich, Ontario. A person in the video's comments section claims to recognize the location and says it's near a local nuclear power plant. I couldn't find any more information about this, so I'd like to know if there is a power plant nearby, and if this could be the result of a nuclear pollution. Either way, I do see what Thomas is talking about when he says air bubbles form at the center of the circle. Let me know if you think this is a living creature or just some sort of naturally occurring optical illusion. Thanks for checking out this video.
Looks like someone had diarrhea in it. Could happen. Could happen. It probably happened. It was diarrhea. Alright, now as per usual, we are ending this one with a little bit of Mr. Bowling. This one is man does the unthinkable right before takeoff. Oh God, that don't sound good.
Today, we're going to look at 3 places you can't go and people who went there anyways. But before we get into today's stories, if you're a fan of the strange dark...
Sorry about that, y'all. Chills' video was a little on the quiet side. If I busted your eardrums out, I am very, very sorry. It happens. Not bad, though.
Mysterious, delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place because that's all we do, and we upload 2 or 3 times every week. So if that's of interest to you, the next time the like button needs a pair of socks, offer to loan them a pair of yours. But make sure they're the kind of socks that immediately slip down under your heel into the shoe as soon as you start walking. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. All right, let's get into today's stories. In 1990, 31-year-old John O'Brien was a landscaper in a town just outside of Chicago, Illinois. In January of that year, he and his friend David decided they wanted to escape the cold Chicago winter and go on some vacation to somewhere nice and warm. And so they decided to book a trip to the very sunny Caribbean islands of Trinidad and Tobago. They left for their trip just a couple of days later, which was believed to be January 8th or January 9th, and the hotel they were staying in was right near the airport in Trinidad. So they land in Trinidad, they get off their plane, they make their way out of the airport, they go to their hotel, they drop their luggage, and then they headed out to explore the town. And over the next couple of days, they not only explored Trinidad, but also the island of Tobago, which was a 4-hour boat ride away, and they had great food, they saw some really cool attractions, and just overall, they had a chance to relax in the warm weather while all their friends back home were freezing in Chicago.
I mean, that in itself sounds nice. It's like, picture me in a tank top and shorts and sandals. Bet you wish you was here. Ha ha! Don't you love those friends? It's like, man, it's so cold here. Oh my god. I don't even want to go outside. Like, I have the heat up on 90 and it's still cold in this sun. No. And then you get that message and it's like, I hope you get eaten by a shark, bro.
And so, by all accounts, their vacation was going exactly to plan until Sunday, the 14th of January. This was the day before they were supposed to fly back to Chicago. That day, John began complaining of some unnamed health issue, which has not been made public, so we don't know what it is. And he went to some drugstore in town in Trinidad to look for a specific medication for this unnamed health issue. But the drugstore did not carry this medication, so John left and he went to another drugstore and another store, but nobody had this medication. And so by the time John got back to the hotel and saw David, David would later remark that John was not only distraught about not having this medication, but John was disoriented. Like whatever this health issue was, it was starting to manifest itself in this kind of disoriented state that John was in because it was not being treated. But eventually, David decided that John was okay enough that they did not need to call a hospital or call a doctor, and the 2 men decided to just go to bed because after all, they had a very early flight the next morning. So the 2 men climb into their respective beds, which are in the same room, 2 twin-size beds, and they fall asleep. But about an hour to maybe an hour and a half after David had fallen asleep, he wakes up to some man standing next to his bed, choking him. He's grabbing his throat and throttling him. And so David has no time to respond to what's going on. He just starts grabbing this guy's hands, and he manages to push them off of him. And then this guy who's standing next to his bed grabs the lamp next to him and smashes David with it. David, from getting hit, falls out.
What? Why? What the? I'm confused overall. Why is there a strange dude in this room, for one? For 2, why is he choking this poor guy? For 3, why is he beating him down with a lamp? For 4, where's the roommate at? For 5, what is going on? Sorry, Mr. MRBALLEN does this, so he makes my brain go stupid.
The bed, he lands on the ground, and this guy, his attacker, jumps on top of him, and the two men are fighting, but eventually David manages to overpower this guy, and he kicks him off. And as soon as he does that, he realizes this guy that's been attacking him is John, and John is completely naked. He's got no clothes on. And so John...
Sorry. How did you not know it was your buddy? Okay, not yet. He was half asleep. He probably really didn't know it was his buddy. Why is your buddy strangling you? Why is he butt naked? What was y'all doing on vacation, bruh?
John just stands up, and David's looking at him like, what's going on? And John just runs out of the hotel room. He ends up running down the hall. He goes down the stairs. He runs past the front desk, out the front doors of the hotel, and just takes off running. And so John runs for several minutes until he reaches the airport. But instead of going through the front gates, he goes to the side of the front gates where there are these huge chain link fences with barbed wire at the top. And John...
You don't want to get your nuts stuck on barbed wire, dude. Don't jump over barbed wire fences bucket naked. Bad things could happen. There's a lot of scenarios that could no.
John, again wearing no clothes, climbs up the chain link fence and then manages to navigate the barbs at the top and drops over onto the other side. But where he landed, although it was on airport property, it was kind of like a trap because this airport had two fences around its perimeter back to back. And so where John landed was like this grassy no man's land between these two fences. But John was on this kind of deranged mission, so he stands up, and instead of trying to get back out again, he turns and climbs the next fence, the one that is closer to the airport. And so he climbs up this fence, he manages to get past all the barbed wire at the top, and he drops into the parking lot on the other side. He stands up and just continues running towards the main building of the airport. But between him and the main building of this airport is this huge concrete wall that doesn't look like it has any place to grab onto to climb over it. But John runs up to this wall and manages to climb up and over the wall. And where he landed on the other side was right next to this security guard shack. And so he comes crashing down, and the four security guards that are in this shack, they see him come over the wall. They see this naked guy just suddenly appear, and so they charge out to apprehend him and figure out what's going on. But John apparently attacked them. We don't know exactly what he did, but he managed to overpower all four of them, and he stole their four-wheel drive vehicle. And so John just bombs away from the security guard.
John's on some other stuff right now, right? Like, sorry, John's not home right now. Please leave your name and number. He'll get back to you as soon as he gets back. What's left of that coffee is so cold. I'm not happy about that.
Shack with the four security guards chasing him on foot, and John, he weaves around the outside of the main airport building and he heads out onto the tarmac. Out on the tarmac, there were several planes that were moving into position for takeoff. One of those planes was this huge British Airways jet airliner passenger plane that was actually the next to take off. They'd already fired up their engines, and they were sitting at the top of the runway just waiting for clearance. And John just drives directly into this plane. But the vehicle he was driving, this little four-wheel drive vehicle, it was not tall enough to actually strike the main body of this plane. So instead, when he hit this plane, he basically got wedged underneath one of the wings. At this point, the four security guards that had been attacked and had their vehicle stolen from them, they're running towards the tarmac, but they've also alerted other security personnel in the airport who are all streaming out onto the tarmac towards this British Airways plane and this vehicle and John. And so as they are descending on on this scene, the security guards would see John from the passenger seat of this four-wheel drive vehicle. He stands up, and they can see he's got a pretty nasty cut on his shoulder. And John reaches up and starts rubbing his hand on the underside of the plane, which had been damaged from running into it. And there was oil leaking off the underside of this plane, and John began rubbing this oil around and then dabbing it into his big wound on his shoulder. And then after packing it with oil, John leapt out of the wrecked four-wheel drive vehicle and then just took off running away from all these security guards and away from this plane. And in the chaos of this moment, all these security guards and all the airport personnel that were descending on this scene, they managed to lose sight of John. He disappeared on the backside of this plane. And so all these security guards and airport personnel, they come to a stop about 100 feet away from this plane and this wrecked vehicle, and they're just kind of staring at it, wondering, what are we going to do next? They're calling other agencies to come in and assist with this situation, when all of a sudden, somebody notices John about 300 feet away on the other side of the plane. He comes out from behind a building. And so he's running towards the plane. He's running towards this wall of security guards and other airport staff. And John, he manages to get all the way up to the plane before anybody can come up and apprehend him. And when he reaches the plane, he stops for a second, looks up at the engine of this airplane that's still spinning. It's been turned on, and John jumps into the engine. And instantaneously, John ceases to exist. He is completely decimated. No one knows for sure what...
Oh my god, that's so horrible. It's not funny. I'm not laughing because it's funny. I'm laughing because he's just like, plop, into the engine. And everybody's just like, that, whatever. Oh. Oh, this airport needs better security, bruh. Oh, poor John.
Actually caused John's rampage, although it's assumed it had to do with whatever this unnamed health issue was. Ultimately, his death was ruled a suicide.
Oh,
one of the most dangerous Olympic sports is called luge.
Oh, what's going to happen on a luge?
In a nutshell, one or two people who are called lugers will ride a sled down a hill as fast as they can. But this hill is this narrow, winding, banked ice track, and these lugers will ride a sled that will go as fast as 80 miles per hour or faster. While accidents in luging are actually quite uncommon, when they do occur, they can be catastrophic.
Yeah.
In 1986, a luge track was built on a ski hill in Alberta, Canada, for the luge event of the 1988 Winter Olympics. This track and the surrounding ski area was called Canada Olympic Park. After the Olympics were over, this park was open to the public for recreational purposes. Nearly 30 years later, on January 29, 2016, 3 teenage boys snuck into Canada Olympic Park after hours. They made their way up the hill until they reached this blue 6-foot-tall fence that was covered with warnings telling people to stay back and don't go past this fence unless you are authorized personnel, and these 3 teenage boys were not authorized personnel. Inside of this 6-foot-tall blue fence was what looked like this tall flight of stairs that led up to what looked almost like a log cabin. And that cabin was the starting house of the luge track. The track literally came out of the cabin and fed down below. The 3 boys, one of which had actually worked at this park the winter before selling tickets, they looked at each other and grinned and then chucked their plastic sleds over this blue fence, and then they climbed up and over themselves. Once on the other side, they each picked up their sled and then made their way up the stairs into the starting house. Once they were inside, they kind of arranged themselves to see who would go first, second, and third. They put their helmets on because they all brought helmets. They strapped on headlamps so they could see the course because there were no lights on the course. And then one by one, they began going down this luge track. But surprisingly, it wasn't that fast. As they went down, they would actually stop and have to use their feet to get going again. But that was because they had these cheap plastic sleds that were not designed for this luge course. What you needed were these specialty sleds with blades on the sides that got you up to full speed. And so
that's why it's really, really dangerous, because if one of those hits you, it'll cut you wide open. It's just like a set of skis. It's horrible.
After the three boys eventually, slowly, painfully made their way all the way down to the bottom of this luge track, they were pretty disappointed, but they thought, okay, well, let's just all get in one sled and we'll go down again, and with the added weight, we should go faster. And so they marched their way back up, all the way up to the top of the starting house, and all three of them sat in one sled and they pushed off, and sure enough, they went way faster. They bombed all the way down this track. It was so much fun. They were totally exhilarated, and after doing it a couple more times, they decided, okay, you know, our luck's going to run out. We're going to get caught, and so they climbed back over that blue fence and snuck out of the park without getting caught. The following weekend, those three same boys, along with 5 of their friends they had recruited, returned to Canada Olympic Park after hours. And so the 3 boys that had been there the weekend before, they led the group up the hill. They got to that blue fence that surrounded the luge starting house, and one by one, each of these teenage boys climbed up and over this fence, and they made their way up the stairs into the starting house. Once they were inside, they began figuring out who was going to go in each of the 3 sleds they had brought along. And they determined they would put 3 boys in the first sled, 3 boys in the second sled, and 2 boys in the final sled. Because of how successful the previous weekend's trip down the luge track had been, according to the 3 boys that had gone, this time the group decided they did not need helmets because this was relatively safe.
They stupid.
Also decided not to bring headlamps because they figured it would be more exhilarating to go flying down this track in the darkness. And so a little after midnight on February 6th, the first 3 boys climbed into the first sled and pushed off. At first, it was going exactly to plan. It was fun, they were going fast, it was exhilarating, but then disaster struck. Unlike the previous weekend, this weekend, there was a metal chain that had been strung across one of the sections towards the bottom of the luge track. It was there to keep a particular section of the track in place. And so these boys, as they come flying around the corner, they don't see it, and they strike this chain at full speed. Now, this chain was at neck height, and so when it hit them, it instantly decapitated and killed one of the boys. It was a 17-year-old named Evan Caldwell. And so he dies immediately, and the other 2 are...
What? Well, what?
Thrown from the sled and landed unconscious. Now, back up at the starting house, they have no way of knowing this has happened to the first sled. Not only because they can't see anything, but also because the boys in the first sled are not making any sound. They're either unconscious or deceased. And so at some point, the second group of boys thinks they've waited long enough to account for the first sled to get down and out of the way. And so they load up their sled and they push off. And so they go flying down, it's going great, but just like the first sled, at some point they turn that corner and they hit that chain. But miraculously, the second group of 3 boys, they hit the chain in such a way that they kind of slipped under it. And so they were all thrown from their sled and kind of smashed into the track, but the worst injury of the second sled was just a broken ankle. And so this group, they stand up and they're totally disoriented. It's dark. They don't know what they just ran into. And before they had a chance to kind of collect their thoughts and yell up to the starting house to try to warn the third and final group not to go, it was already too late. All the boys could do in the second sled group was to just get out of the way as the third and final sled carrying the final 2 boys came bombing down, and they too struck that chain at full speed. One of the 2 boys on board this third and final sled was a 17-year-old named Jordan Caldwell, and he too, unfortunately, would be decapitated by the chain and would die instantly. He was actually the twin brother of Evan Caldwell, the boy on the first sled who had also died. The other boy on the third sled would be thrown from the sled and would suffer.
So the only 2 that died was brothers? That was a setup. They set him up. They was like, oh, we don't like him. Redheaded. Nope.
Or grievous injuries as well. One of the survivors of the crash, who was actually on the first sled, his name was Caleb, and he was knocked unconscious from being thrown. When he came to, he was laying in a section of the track that was covered by a tarp, and at first he couldn't see anything, he couldn't hear anything, but he just felt like there was something lodged in his throat, and it was making it very hard to breathe. Most likely that was just from his throat being crushed in from hitting that chain. And so as he's struggling to breathe, his senses began to come back to him, and his sight came back, and he noticed he was laying down, and one of the boys who had been on the second sled was kneeling next to him. This was one of the boys that had not been badly hurt, and he had his hand on Caleb's shoulder, and he was praying for Caleb to survive. And so as Caleb is taking in that someone is praying over him, he notices somewhere else. His hearing is starting to pick up. He can hear someone else, and it would turn out to be a boy named Mark, who was on the first sled, who had been very badly injured. His face was very badly beaten up. He was laying somewhere nearby, and he was just singing this religious song. He was trying to keep spirits high, and he was trying to will people to hold on and to survive as long as they possibly could. And then Caleb remembered hearing someone calling 911, and then he doesn't remember what happened next. When the paramedics ultimately arrived within the hour, they got to the track and they found all of these boys spread out all over the track, because when they hit this chain, they got sent flying. But they discovered the twins were actually laying right next to each other, and none of these surviving boys had moved their bodies. And so even though the grief was just unfathomable amongst this family that had lost their two sons, there was some solace in the fact that despite having come down in different sleds, that the twins, Evan and Jordan, were together in their final moments. The 6 survivors...
That's just weird, bro. I don't like that. Now, for everyone there, 2 died, and it was the twins, the redheaded twins. I don't like that. But it's okay, because they was together. No, it's not okay.
Of this accident would walk away from it with life-changing head injuries and other medical issues, and they would walk away with an indescribable sense of guilt and regret. But they consider themselves lucky because at least they survived. IQ, which stands for Intelligence Quotient, is a measure of someone's intelligence. To find your IQ, you need to take an official IQ test, which gives you an IQ score. The vast majority of people will score about 100 as their IQ, and so that's considered to be the average intelligence for any given person. But a very small number of people will score somewhere between 130 and 160. And so that's considered to be a very high IQ. Those are very, very gifted people. And then there is an even smaller group of people that score above 160. And so that is the genius class. Anybody who scores above 160 is literally a genius. To give you a sense of just how rare that is, Albert Einstein, who is largely considered to be one of the smartest people to have ever lived, he was not even considered a genius, at least not by his IQ. He was about 160, so right on the cusp of geniusness. But as we will learn from this story, having an exceptionally high IQ does not make you immune to making unfathomably bad choices. In 1991, 31-year-old Jackie Katarik, who had a genius IQ of 170, so she was smarter than Albert Einstein, she graduated from UCLA Medical School with honors. She completed her medical residency, which is like a multi-year apprenticeship for new doctors, at Cedars-Sinai Hospital in Los Angeles, which is one of the very best hospitals in America. After that, she opened her very own practice just north of LA in a town called Bakersfield, California, and she also became a part-time professor at her alma mater, UCLA. By all accounts, Jackie was brilliant, she was successful, and she loved what she did, and her patients and her students loved her right back. Fast forward to 2010, Jackie was 49 years old, and she was still running her very successful practice, and she was still teaching at UCLA. And she was in an on-again, off-again relationship with a 58-year-old man named William Moody. While the details of their relationship are not really publicly known, it's fairly easy to deduce from the reporting that came from this case that Jackie and William fought a lot. On Wednesday, August 25th of that year, Jackie was spotted by herself at a Mediterranean restaurant in Bakersfield, California, having some drinks. And then at some point during the night, she called a ride service to pick her up and take her home again. Even though we don't know this for sure, it's assumed that she was too intoxicated to drive, and that's why she called the ride service. The following morning, Jackie did not show up for work. Her assistant at her medical practice is the one who noticed Jackie had not shown up, and so when she didn't, she called her boss, but her boss didn't pick up. And so after a couple of failed attempts at getting in touch with Jackie, this assistant called Jackie's boyfriend, William. And so William, he picks up the phone, and when the assistant asks him, hey, have you seen Jackie? She has not come into work today. William actually says, yes, I saw her last night. William would explain to the assistant that the night before he was in his house by himself in Bakersfield, California, not far from this restaurant where Jackie was last seen. And he said that at some point, unannounced, he saw Jackie pull up in front of his house. And so he could tell from her general demeanor and her look and her pace that she was upset about something, or he just sensed there was going to be some conflict if he went to the door. And so he decided to actually slip out the back door and kind of run away from his property before Jackie could see him. And so he actually left the property and went to a friend's house who was nearby and spent the night with this friend. And so when the assistant called William, William was actually still at this friend's house. He had not been back to his actual property. And so he would tell the assistant that, the last I saw of Jackie, it was late at night. She had pulled up in front of my house, but then I split. So I don't know what she did. I assume she left. But William would tell the assistant that, you know what, I'll go back over to my house and I'll see if she's still there or if there's some indication of where she might have gone. And so William hangs up the phone, he leaves his friend's house and walks the couple of blocks back to his own property. And when he gets there, sure enough, right out front of his house is Jackie's car. Now, William knew his house was locked and Jackie didn't have a key. And so Jackie must just be sitting in her car waiting for him to return. And so William walks up to the car expecting to see Jackie and expecting probably to fight about something. But when he gets up to the car, Jackie's not in there, but her purse, her cell phone, her wallet, that's all over the inside of the car. And so William...
See, even smart people can be dum-dums. I have a feeling this is, she did something stupid. Yeah, he ran away because he's like, oh, she's going to be angry. She's angry. Smart people are always angry. Y'all ever notice that? They know too much.
Turns and looks at his house thinking, is she in the house? Did she somehow get in? Is she on the back of the house? And so William just starts yelling out for Jackie as he begins to walk around his house. And so as he goes around towards the back of the house, he's yelling out for Jackie. No one's calling back. And then he reaches the back of the house and there's no sign of Jackie, but he sees there's a shovel on the ground near his back door. And then he looks at his back door and it looks very obviously like someone, probably Jackie, had been using the shovel to try to pry open the back door, like they were trying to break in, but it hadn't worked. And so William just kind of sees that and then continues walking around the other side of the house. So he's completely walked around the entire property. There's no sign of Jackie. And so he's thinking, okay, I guess she must have gotten in somehow. She's in the house somewhere. And so William goes to the front door. He unlocks his front door. He goes inside. And even though he knows all of his doors have been locked, all the windows are locked, he's kind of on edge because he's thinking she's got to be in here. But he walks through his house and there's no sign of Jackie. And there's no sign that anybody else had been in there since he was last in there. And so he's totally puzzled because it doesn't really make any sense that Jackie's car is out.
Does he have a fireplace? Did she try to pull a Santa Claus and go down a fireplace? Did I just figure this out before?
Front, but he's thinking, okay, maybe she got here and then she called the ride service and went somewhere else. I'm sure she's fine. So William calls the medical assistant and says, look, her car is here, her stuff's here, but she's not here. I don't know what she's doing. I'll let you know if anything comes of it. The assistant said, I really feel like something's off here and we really do need to call the police. And so William would say, you know what? I think that's a good idea too. Let's just get them involved and make sure she's okay. And so they call the police, and the police start by going to Jackie's residence. But Jackie's not there, and there's no sign of her. The neighbors haven't seen her. And so the police go to William's household, and they search Jackie's car, and they search William's house and the surrounding area right outside. But there's really no clues as to what actually happened to Jackie. And so after the police talked to a bunch of neighbors and friends and family, they just told William and this medical assistant that at this point, they just need to wait, and that hopefully Jackie will just come out of wherever it is she's hiding or wherever she's gone. Maybe she's upset. Maybe she was fighting with William and she's run off somewhere, but we just got to wait and see what happens. 2 days later, Jackie was still unaccounted for. No one knew where she was. No one had heard from her. No one had seen her when William's friend went over to his house. William, the day before, so 24 hours after Jackie had been reported missing, he had left the country on a prearranged trip. But he was not being looked at as a potential suspect or having anything to do with Jackie's disappearance, and so he was allowed to go. And so this friend had been asked to go to his property to feed his fish. And so he shows up on Saturday, that's 48 hours after Jackie has been reported missing. He goes inside the house, and immediately he is hit with this terrible smell inside of William's house.
Fireplace. Stuck in a chimney. Dum.
He's covering his face. He's walking around the house trying to figure out where the smell is coming from. He thinks it could be the fridge. Maybe something's rotting that's fallen out or the door's open or something, but it's not the fridge. He goes to the trash. It's not the trash. He goes to the fish. It's not the fish. He makes his way over to the fireplace, and he realizes that's where the smell is coming from. And so
Big Brian,
he gets down and he kind of smells inside the fireplace, but it's not really coming from the area where the logs would be. It's coming from up in the chimney flue. And so he puts his head down and kind of turns and looks up the chimney, and about 2 feet up the flue, dangling down, are 2 human legs. And they would be Jackie's legs. It would turn out a few days earlier when Jackie was at that restaurant drinking by herself, she did call that ride service to come give her a ride home, presumably because she was too intoxicated to drive. But before they showed up, Jackie just got into her car anyways and drove to her estranged boyfriend's house. And so she gets there. William, meanwhile, is sneaking out the back and running off to his friend's house. Jackie does not see him. She makes her way up to the front door and presumably tries to knock and get William's attention. But when no attention is given to her and it seems like no one's inside, she decides she's going to try to get into the house. And so the front door was locked. The windows were all locked. She got to the back door and that was locked. So she tried the shovel and tried to pry it open, but it didn't work. And so eventually Jackie climbed up the permanent ladder that's on the back of the house. There isn't much online describing this permanent ladder. It could be a fire escape or it could be some sort of lawn decoration, but there was something on the back of the house that you could climb up if you wanted to. And so Jackie climbed up this permanent ladder and actually got onto the roof. And then when she was on the roof...
See, even when smart people get drunk, stupid things happen. I thought it was just me. It's everyone.
She walked to the center where the chimney was, and there was this cap over the top of the chimney to prevent things from going into the chimney. She removed the cap and then lowered herself feet first into this chimney. Now, it's unclear how quickly she descended this chimney, but eventually she got stuck because the width of this chimney was not uniform. It started fairly wide at the top and then narrowed as it went down. And so at some point, as she went down feet first, she would have gotten completely wedged. It wouldn't have mattered if her hands were above her head or by her side, because either way, they were useless. She couldn't bend her arms, and there was nothing to grab onto, so her arms couldn't do anything. And then below her, there was nothing for her feet to push onto. And so she was totally stuck. And since William was not in his house, he had left, there was no one there to help her. And so Jackie probably started screaming for help, but as soon as she did that and she exhaled that huge scream, her chest would have constricted from exhaling, and that would have shrunk her chest, making her thinner, and she would have dropped a little bit farther into the chimney. And then when she breathed back in again, her chest would not be able to expand back to its original position because the chimney would be restricting her. It's like this brace that's around her chest that as she gets lower and lower and lower, it gets tighter and tighter and tighter. And so her lung capacity is shrinking second by second. And as her lung capacity shrinks, she would not have had the lung strength to emit a loud enough sound to get anybody's attention. Basically, she couldn't scream. She couldn't take in a big enough breath to scream out. And so she was just stuck in this totally compromised position in this claustrophobic little chimney where she could do nothing but wait and hope maybe William or someone took notice of the fact that she was in here, even though, again, she couldn't get anyone's attention. And so most likely she would have begun rationing her breaths because, again, every time she breathes out too much, she goes farther and farther, making it harder and harder to breathe. And at some point, starting on Thursday night, she would have heard William in the house. He would have been only a few feet away from her, but she can't make a sound loud enough to get his attention. And we know she was alive by Thursday night because neighbors heard someone faintly yelling help on Friday night. So nearly 48 hours after she got stuck in the chimney, it's believed she was still alive. And those neighbors, when they heard that faint call for help, they assumed it was kids in a nearby pool, and so they didn't do anything about it. When they found out what had happened, they thought, you know what, it was coming from that chimney. That's where we heard it coming from. Jackie would die shortly after the neighbors heard her calling for help because she was dead by the time the friend found her in the chimney the following day on Saturday. Jackie would die from mechanical asphyxia, which is basically suffocation, but it's caused by some physical obstruction. And in this case, it was the chimney. The chimney literally crushed her chest to the point where she could no longer inflate her lungs. It would take firefighters approximately 5 hours to break this chimney down to finally retrieve Jackie's body. No charges were filed against anyone for Jackie's death. It was ruled to be an accident caused by an unbelievable error in judgment by an unbelievably brilliant woman. So that's going to do it, guys. If you found the secret in today's episode, let us know in the comments section what it is and where you found it, so give us the timestamp. And if you're the first to do that, we'll pin you at the top of the comments section. If you got something out of today's episode and you haven't done this already, the next time the like button needs a pair of socks, offer to loan them yours, but make sure you give them a pair that immediately slides down into their shoe as soon as they start walking. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn...
See, smart people can be stupid too. Wow. Alright. Damn. That's sad. Alright, y'all. If you're a fan of the spooky, scary, strange, or strange, think about subscribing. If you enjoyed today's video, please hit that thumbs up. It really tends to help. As always, be good to one another. I'll see you in the next one. Stay spooky. What? God. When smart people go wrong. Dun, dun, dun.